Welcome to our latest episode of Voices in Veterinary. I'm Laura Dennis here at Xoran Technologies in Ann Arbor, and we're doing something new today. We have as our guest Jackie Vestevich, our executive chairperson here at Xoran. Jackie, welcome.
Thank you.
And she's here because she is someone who is extremely passionate about the veterinary space and market. And we're here to learn why today and how that impacts what we do here at Xoran Technologies. So I'm super excited to have you here as my host, Jackie. Thank you so much. And let's get started because, of course, I have these 5 questions for you. Okay.
I'm super happy to be here, and I'm excited to hear your 5 questions.
Okay, let's get to it then. So first, what makes you so passionate about working in veterinary?
Okay, where to start? Everything all the time now, which is, in case people are not aware of it, one of our hosts' mottos.
That's
Yes.
yes.
So I have been an animal lover since I was a little girl. I'm an animal person and naturally gravitate to want to help animals, and have had pets my whole life, dogs and cats and other animals too. And what, how do you describe what an animal person feels passionate about? Where does that passion come from? I don't know. It's always been part of me. And it's kind of like a calling. So I'm super excited that at Xoran, we were able to use our great technologies, innovations in imaging, advancements in imaging and point of care diagnostics and translate that into the veterinary world to help animals. It's very, very, very important that the veterinarians are given as many tools as they can have on hand for real-time assessment of their patients' conditions, not only for the patient's sake, but for their the pet owner. It makes so much of a difference to be able to have answers and have your veterinarian equipped with the tools to give you answers right away to know what's happening, so you can make decisions for treatment.
So let's talk about that a little bit more. I think that there has been a recent change in the pet parent population where instead of saying, just take my animal and tell me what to do and see if I can afford it, there's been this change where you have clients such as yourself who are engaged in that diagnostic process, who are wanting to know the terminology, who are actually asking questions and requesting additional diagnostic services. So I think you're one of those parents. So what does that look like for you, and how do you make your way in advocating for your pet?
I think you're right. You know, how many of us have evolved over the past few years to, like, whenever we have any kind of symptoms, going to the web and researching what's going on, you know, and
Yep.
yeah. And so, and I think that a lot of us, as we are becoming more and more comfortable with surfing the web to try to find out what's going on with ourselves in human medicine, to equip ourselves, educate ourselves, talk to our doctors in a meaningful way. I think that animal people and pet parents are doing the same thing. We're actively seeking out information about what are the typical, you know, if these symptoms are being demonstrated by our pets, what are the typical things that are wrong with them, and what kind of doctor do I need to see? What kind of veterinarian do I need to see? If I go to my regular vet, will they, you know, I'm going to bring this information in with them and in with me that I've researched and asked them questions about it. I think that that's received in hopefully in a positive way by our doctors and our veterinarians, but becoming an educated advocate for your patient, whether it's your child, yourself, or your animal, I think is definitely something that's inherent to me, something I just naturally do and want to do, and I think is becoming more prevalent too with others.
I think it is becoming more prevalent. We're seeing this shift where during the pandemic, veterinary clinics started shutting down, and we need to bear down, be ready for, beat closures and what have you. And quite the opposite happened. And I think our human population began to rely even more on that animal relationship, and that's become part of, the animal is now a part of the family. It's not, your pet is part of your family. It's not some separate entity. So I think the care and how we need to approach our clients in a veterinary clinic has also kind of shifted. Which leads me to my next question, and there are many questions, but this is the main question, question number 2. What trends are you seeing in hospitals? Overall or specific, what are you seeing? What are you seeing as a client who has, maybe we could talk about your pets a little bit, because you are advocating for them in real time.
Right. As for trends in hospitals, speaking as a pet parent, because who goes to veterinary hospitals and specialists all the time, because I'm constantly having pets, and then pets, like children, constantly need some kind of care or getting into some kind of issues. But what I'm seeing is that there is, first of all, veterinarians are my heroes. They're constantly focused primarily on the treatment of the pet above everything. Like they're usually animal people driven by the same calling, wanting to focus all of their attention and talents on helping one animal at a time as they come in. And so what I'm seeing, but going back to your issue about the trending, what I'm seeing is that the veterinarians are, in addition to being generalists and have to treat a bunch of different species, I'm seeing that a lot of hospitals are featuring specialists, whether they're boarded specialists or otherwise. And so when you go to see a general veterinarian, they will give you some guidance as to the general condition, but will refer you to a specialist for advanced care. So just as we see in human medicine, in the veterinary medicine, I think that we're seeing specialists being called on for advanced treatment, diagnostics and treatments.
I think you and I have spoken a lot about this, that we're on the cusp of a very real change in veterinary medicine, where having access to the diagnostic imaging, for example, that Xoran is providing with this open bore CT, Vitron, being able to see and plan treatment and work on having minimally invasive approaches for surgical solutions. I think that we're kind of on the cusp of that, and I think that the market is really ripe for that, and really, I think clients are going to respond to that, because it's less recovery time, less duration of anesthesia, because surgeries are shorter, and it only goes back to just getting the pet back to its normal happy life within the family. So I agree. We're really it's a very interesting trend, and something that we touched on in a different episode, one with Tori, our regional sales manager for veterinary, was that our veterinarians are looking for diagnostic services that will actually they can keep in clinic, right? That isn't enabled through an app where they don't have control, or enabled through a large food supplier or what have you. And this also, aside from being the revenue producer, puts that diagnostic capability back into the hands of the clinician in real time.
Right. That's a really good point. As I was saying, that as we see, people's, becoming more educated and becoming more of an advocate for their pets and wanting to get specialist care, we're also seeing the veterinarians seeking information and seeking to be able to help, obviously, with the tools that they have available. If they have the ability to see what's going on with your pet in real time with the tools that they have in diagnostic tools and devices and so forth that they have on site, that will enable them to use their talents for the actual treatment part, as opposed to, for example, we've seen the evolution in medical care, and I think the same thing in veterinary, where we have, instead of sending the patients out to a separate facility for imaging, for advanced imaging, whether it's MRI or CT, or even ultrasound, usually that, you have to take your patient, your pet, away from the original meeting that you're having, the examination at the general vet's office, and have a separate appointment at at a radiology center, imaging center, so forth. And then you have to come back to your veterinary office, and then at a separate occasion to try to, get the reading of what was seen on the advanced imaging device that was remotely located at a separate point of time, and then consult again with your veterinarian about what the options are. Meanwhile, your poor pet has been, continue to suffer from whatever disease or injury that they've had throughout this entire time while this delay in diagnostics is happening. The veterinarians, I think, are appreciative of being able to have the tools, to have the data, to know what's happening at the same time they're examining your pet, so that they can, and then they can show you the data. In the case of the CT, the Vetron or the VetCat, they can show you in real time as the pet owner, here is an image, a 3D image of your pet's condition. And here's what the problem is, and here's what I plan to do about it, so that you can feel comfortable and understand what's happening and what the plan is. You can authorize them to do that treatment. And it's all done in a timely way where there's no delay and no stress and or continued pain or discomfort for anybody involved. So it makes a huge difference.
I agree. And the benefits for the pet, but also the client are really, I'm excited to see what the measurements are, because I feel like right now they're immeasurable. The American Express said it's priceless, but I think there is some dollar amount that we can ultimately put to it, right? Less anesthesia, less time away from home, less recovery time. All of these things are really going to make an impact on the care of animals.
Right.
So
one other point, Laura, that I wanted to say is that our pets can't talk to us, obviously, at least not in our language. And so they pick up a lot of cues about what's happening, and they're completely dependent on us. So as pet owners or pet parents, our stress level, our uncertainty, our, anxiety, all of that translates to them if they're already suffering from some kind of medical issue. And we feel unsure of what's happening because we're rushing back and forth to different places trying to get answers. That is also just heartbreaking for the pet owner, and unfortunate for the pet. This, having the diagnostics, point of care diagnostics in the veterinarian's hands at their fingertips, ready for them to have answers for us and to have a plan of action, gives us the confidence and assurance that our babies are in good hands, and that there's a path toward relief, which is so huge.
I really appreciate you saying all those things, Jackie, because it's important for our audience to understand that there are clients out there like you, and there are more and more clients who are becoming more engaged in the details of the care of their animal. And we should, I think, as our clinicians should be paying attention to that, because these are their customers at the end of the day. As we call them clients, but these are the humans that our veterinarians have to interface with and engage with and create a relationship with. And if we do so in a manner that acknowledges this increased care, level of education, level of advocacy, it can only improve the overall care that is provided and that the animal receives.
Yes. I've had just wonderful, wonderful experiences with veterinarians. I think are just extraordinary people. I had a greyhound who had idiopathic epilepsy, and he was treated by a wonderful neurosurgery group out of Michigan. These guys, they recognized in me kind of my passion and my involvement in his name was Joseph Pickledash, in JoJo's care. And they went out of their way to accommodate that. They saw that, okay, this is a person who's very, very interested in becoming educated and being part of the decision-making process about what we do in treatment options. And when JoJo was too sick to come out of the car, when I went to the vet's office, Dr. Isaacs actually crawled into the back of my car personally, came out of his vet clinic. He crawled into the back of the car. He reassured JoJo. He was able to assess him there. It was just, these people are extraordinary. And if they recognize in us as the pet owners that we are that involved and that invested in making sure our pets are healthy and feel safe and are fear-free. And I think they respond to that. If we give them the tools, we let them know as a pet parents, this is important to us and we want to be part of it. They respond in kind.
Exactly. Our next question
Okay.
is, what are the most important issues that hospitals will face this year, 2022? But we're in 2022, everybody. Past 2020. Time has moved forward.
Right. I think that, I don't know, what do you think, Laura? I was just thinking like maybe, sorry to flip the question back on you, but I was just thinking there's been a lot of consolidation. There's been a lot of increase in care plans, insurance coverage for veterinary care, individuals or group or family coverage, and what should we be doing? And I'm just seeing trends like that. I'm seeing that veterinarians are wanting to provide more services beyond, and be able to, provide their clients with more options for care, medications, training, diagnoses, so forth. It's not simply just that's what I'm seeing. Those are just a random bullet point list of things that I noticed. And now back to you. What do you think that you're saying?
Well, I do have one. Okay, so I think that this is a trend that we're not going to see come to fruition this year, but I think that it's something that our hospitals have to be thinking of. I think that our veterinarians have realized just the sheer amount of animals that need to be seen. We know there's a backlog. People are scheduled out 3-6 months for a specialist. They are growing, and our veterinary clinics are growing, and we need to find ways to protect our veterinarians from working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. They're opening up new offices. They're trying to find new ways to bring care. But I see this, a lot of them are doing it. So when we see all of them doing, there's going to be a question 8 to 10, 12 months from now. How do you differentiate yourself from all the different pop-up offices all around the country? How are you going to be the one to attract the clientele who is willing to, it's so one of the reasons why we have such a high rate, unfortunately, of suicide in the veterinary, let's just face it right head on, in this industry, is because sometimes a client will choose not to care for the animal. They cannot afford it. There's this affordability, and we have to choose different pathways of palliative care, and those things can be devastating for someone who cares for animals. So we want to care for those, caring for the people who are willing to put their money behind the care allows clinicians to now do pro bono care for those who cannot care for it. So there's a both and. I'm not saying there's not space for that, but how do we continue to attract those paying clients who are going to authorize that advanced treatment, those advanced diagnostics, and being out ahead of that? And one of my answers is always marketing, but being that place, being that location where those needs are listened to, those needs are heard from the client who's voicing those needs and voicing that background and those clinical kind of symptoms. How can these new veterinary locations face this changing clientele and succeed in this growth environment? That is, I think, a strategic, important issue for our veterinary practices.
I think that's an excellent point. The veterinarians' offices have been slammed. It's hard to get in anywhere. There's long waiting lines and cross referrals because all the veterinarians really want the animals cared for. They just are not, there's not enough veterinarians, and there are not enough veterinary technicians who are also fabulous heroes in the world of veterinary care. And frankly, something you and I talked about before, Laura, having a point of care scanner, a diagnostic scanner in a veterinary clinic is like having another tech. It's like having a tech without any, overtime issues, because because you have you have there in a device the ability to see what's going on in a few seconds. in non-invasive, immediate answers to what's happening by getting a 3D image right there during an exam. I think it's going to be invaluable in terms of creating standing out as a veterinary clinic if you're competing with other veterinary clinics after this blows by in 2022, as you're saying. But also it's just like adding to your staff. It's a wingman for your veterinarians and your techs.
Yes, and it increases your diagnostic capability. That's a really good point, Jackie. Thank you for bringing that back home, where having diagnostic imaging such as Vetron or VetCat can really assist that clinic in meeting the needs of that clientele. So speaking of you,
sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to say now that brings it around to your point, which is if you, as a pet owner, and I'm deciding between which veterinarian should I be going to, right, in 2023,
yes,
a veterinarian clinic that is fully equipped with advanced diagnostics, with veterinarians and techs who I trust, they have the ability to get the answers that I need and have a path toward diagnosis and treatment. Though, I'm going to pick that clinic over another clinic that does not have those facilities and abilities, of course.
You're right. And one of the first things you might do is look at the website, but also, as I do with my children, I give the third degree to the front desk staff. What type of, in a very polite way,
Of course.
It's very upstanding, unless they tell me no. What type of diagnostic services do you have in your facility? Am I going to have to go out and come back? How quickly does it happen? I want to know all of those things. And I think our busy clientele, if you can get it all done in one stop, why wouldn't you? Especially when we know that our animals do have not long recovery times from anesthesia, but they're out of it. Their digestive system is off. They're not feeling like themselves. You almost have to have, as a working mother, you guys have another day to stay at home with your pet child to make sure that they're okay to be left alone after that anesthesia at the office. So you can reduce that by having that diagnostic imaging in-house. It's going to make clients who are busy and have that means to choose that facility as opposed to one who doesn't.
Right. Yeah. Saving time and having your baby back home as soon as possible is really important. Yeah. I agree.
So speaking of which, who is your baby? Usually I say, of whom are you the guardian? But tell us about your pets.
Yeah. So I'm very lucky right now to have two greyhounds that are former racing greyhounds from the tracks that were closed recently due to the pandemic, out of Kansas, although they came out of a rescue group in Illinois. And one is named Bruno, and he is kind of like a Ferrari of greyhounds, very sleek and very fast. And the other is Alvin, and he is kind of like a turbocharged Jeep. Or like some kind of Marmaduke on steroids or something. I don't know. They're fabulous dogs, and they're really enjoying their retirement from the racing industry. And of course, I'm spoiling them to death.
Follow-up question.
Yes.
Have you played him the song "We Don't Talk About Bruno"?
I have played. I think that you mentioned it, that your kids love that song. Yes. And as a result, I of course pulled it up and I played it. Yes, I did play it. I did play it for Bruno. Okay. We're not supposed to say that.
We don't talk about that.
No, we don't.
I knew that the listeners are going to have a burning question about that because Encanto, and that's why. And so finally, official question number 5 for you is, what is your craziest vet office story?
Okay.
Hold on.
Can we have one of those like cartoons that give me a moment to think about this? The craziest vet.
I don't think you guys want me to sing. I don't think you want me to do like the Lin-Manuel Miranda like rap. I don't think that that's a thing. This is not a.
If we find one, we can put it in.
Thank you. I
just need big pauses so I can know where to edit out.
Oh, all right.
Do a little and then
now I just want to add.
Who's losing whom?
Okay, so for crazy stories.
Jackie, start again. We lost you. Your feed went out for a little bit.
You're in and out a little bit. Just start again.
Unstable. It's saying it's unstable.
Yeah.
Laura, what kind of crazy story are you looking for?
Well, so Tori told a story about alpacas at a trade show and about a baby squirrel on a shoulder. Like, it can be anything. Things that you've seen, or like, something where you would want, if you had somebody with you, a human with you in the office, you'd be like, did that just happen? Like, you saw that, right? Like, what? Like, oh, that did just happen.
Okay, I got it. I used to have a Basenji, which is a barkless dog. And he was
yes. Okay.
Yeah. And this was years and years ago. And he used to be like, I don't know, some kind of Tasmanian devil that could never be alone, because he would just kind of swirl into a wild vortex of activity. And so there's certain things that you do not do. His name was Polo, and you do not do with Polo. Okay. So, and one of the things that you do is do not tie him with a leash to something. Okay. There's so many stories about him. I don't even know how to give you his personality, except
known you for like 20 years. I can't believe I've never heard these stories. So just let our listeners know that this is a first. I haven't even heard this story. So go ahead.
Okay. So at some point I remember this is literally like 25 years ago or even longer. I took him to like a doggy daycare kind of place. And I said, do not tie him to anything. That's one of his rules. And they said, we've got it. We know animals and so forth. So I was literally driving home from there, and they called me and said, please come back. Your dog, yes, we did tie him to something, and your dog got loose from that, and then went around to all the kennels in the daycare and opened all the doors. So all the dogs, not only did he get himself free, but he released all the other dogs. Okay. So, and it was just mayhem, and they didn't want him there anymore because they couldn't tie him to anything. So
I told you not to do it.
I don't know, it was a breakout. So then when I brought Polo to his veterinarian, I said, please do not tie him to anything. It won't work out well. And he said, and he gave me assurance. Okay, Jackie, I'm humoring you. Yes, of course I won't. And then literally when I picked him back up from the vet that day, they had a different leash on him than the one I brought him in with. And the doctor came out with his hands like this, cupped with just a pile of shredded material that was the original leash that he had used to tie Polo to something when he first arrived. And he said, I'm sorry. I know you said not to tie him to anything, but we did temporarily. And this is what's left over. So he handed the dog over and the pile of what used to be a leash.
And also, please don't come back, or were you allowed back there?
Yes.
That you could still come back because you would have warned him?
Yes. Okay. It was Dr. Ross from Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. Wonderful, wonderful doctor. Used to do house calls. And in another funny story, he and I used to have to like lift up furniture to try to get to my cat so he could give them their shot. So he used to follow me, it was just crazy. So there's all sorts of crazy stories now that I'm thinking about it.
Now, does being tied to a human on a walk count? Did that count as being tied to something? Like, I just have just one follow-up question. Like, does that count? It has to be like, no. You can't tie it to an innate object.
Yeah, don't tie him to a doorknob or a crate or something.
But he could be walked on a leash. That was okay. Okay, yeah. I had to just follow up. That's all. I was like, do we have to just use mind control to keep him away? Or I just had questions. Okay, so now everybody. So next we have a trip down memory lane in a super fun add-on separate from our podcast. So find the link down below and join us with our add-on in just a moment. And we'll see you next time for our Voices in Veterinary podcast. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is me, Jackie, with Joseph Pickle Dash, Jojo, the greyhound extraordinaire that we talked about in the main podcast. And He was our first model for our vet cat scanner at Xoran and was such a great sport. Working here with Dan, a friend of his, posing in front of our scanner. And this is me hanging out with him in between shots, between marketing shots. And this is Bridget, his sister, who is also a beautiful model for our early days of vet cats. These are scanners that are used primarily by veterinary dentists to get really good 3D, high quality 3D images within seconds right in their clinic. And let's see if we can keep going here. Now, the next iteration, I thought this was fabulous. This is the veterinary staff at the Detroit Zoo who had our Xoran Vetron, which is the open bore scanner that you can fit almost any animal into, but it's very, very compact, as you can see, as it's being stored here right around the corner next to small carts here, but you can almost get everybody right into the middle of that thing, and they just loved it. I thought everyone might like to see that. I just thought I'd let you guys see, in case you didn't know, that's me in the middle there with my two doggos. That's Alvin and Bruno. Bruno is the dark brindle with the funny ears, and Alvin is the crazy, rambunctious, turbocharged Jeep there on the right of your screen. So that's it. Signing off now from my little add-on. Thanks, everyone.